All right, so welcome everybody. Great you are here. Again, I will share the link to the board. So there is a prepared Miro board. Oh, David is joining from the sun. Beautiful. Not too bad. I didn't see too much sun today. I was the whole day in the office. Well, it is what it is. Okay, I will share my screen now. So welcome to the board. As I said, there is no presentation, nothing. The only thing we will be doing today is with about an hour, we will model. I will show you a little bit how the Miro integration works, how the tooling works. This is the tooling I work with every single day. Of course, at any point in time, feel free to ask questions either about the tooling or about event modeling or about event sourcing. I'm happy to answer. At least I will try to answer all the questions. And I just want to give you a brief introduction. Who am I? How do you read this board? There's quite some information on this board prepared for you. So let's start on the very left side. Quick introduction. Why am I giving this webinar? Who am I? Since you are here, you're either following me on LinkedIn or somebody told you to get to this webinar. I'm Martin. I own a company called Nebulit. What I do is I support and help other companies work with event modeling, work with event sourcing, and work with event-driven architectures, because I personally think this is the future of our industry. I've seen it for the last few years. Building systems and planning them with event modeling is so successful, and it's such a pleasure to work that way, because suddenly you have a language that you can talk to your business experts, and the business experts understand exactly what you're talking about, and vice versa. And this is so beautiful, and you will see this in action today. But what I'm truly passionate about is to get developers and people to their first big aha moment. What does that mean? When you start to learn about event modeling and event sourcing and everything, it's really hard to get into that. Why? Because there is so much information scattered across the internet, and you need to pick up these breadcrumbs all over the place to get the big picture. And I had my first aha moment. I can to the day remember when it was. It was in November 2021 when I read the articles available on event modeling on the internet. And suddenly I realized what is possible with this approach. And I immediately started to dive into this topic, learned everything I could, asked millions of questions, read all articles, everything, just to understand how this truly works. And to make this a little bit easier for all the other people, I wrote a book about this whole topic, which is called Understanding Event Sourcing. So if you want to dive into this whole thing, this is what I would love you to do. First, stop to read millions of articles and all the things. The most important thing, this is red here, the most important thing you need to do when you want to learn and understand event modeling and event sourcing, which is really what you should do, you need to build something. Model a system and build the system. It doesn't matter which framework you use, it doesn't matter which technology you use. Technology is the least important part in this whole concept. Just start building something with event sourcing. And I promise, if you do it correctly, you will understand where the benefits are and what the big aha moment is. And only if you want to speed this up a little bit. So you don't need my book for this, you don't need my course for this, nothing. You can just get started. There is a lot of information, and on eventmodeling.org there are articles which can get you started. Only if you want to speed up this a little bit. There are 3 things you could do. You can join my newsletter. I will write once per week something in depth about event modeling or event sourcing. You will only get one email per week, not more, not less. That's exactly what I do. The second thing you can do is you can read my book, which is called Understanding Event Sourcing, which describes this whole process from beginning to end with one consistent example. If you stay until the end of the webinar, you will get a voucher for the book. Just for you to as an information. And the last thing, there is a course which is brand new, which is called Implementing Event Sourcing, which is exactly the book in course form. So if you want to, the idea is really, if you read the book, you can jump between the book and the course, read something, learn something, and then directly apply it. That's the whole idea of it. And overall, the whole idea is, how do I get you faster to your big aha moment? All right. Now, if you look at this board here, there's a lot of information. For example, what you see here is, we won't go into the details of the theory behind event modeling and all that. I have tons and tons of information on my website, eventmodelers.de. You find tons of information there, eventmodeling.org, it's the same. But here are the few elements you need to model any system in the world. You don't need more than what you see here. This is all you need to model any system in the world. So we have events, we have commands, and we have read models, and basically just a few additional elements, like here you see the gear symbol. That's an automation. We use this for a background process. You will see this in a second. As I said, this is all you need to model any system in the world. And typically, when you work with event modeling, it follows a certain process. And you see the whole process here. Typically, it's the event model. It has 7 phases. We start with the brainstorming, gather all the facts about the system. Typically, when you work with events, if you work with event storming, it's exactly the same. So in the beginning, we just try to find as many events as possible and gather information about our system. Next thing we do is we try to bring this in an order, because in event modeling, we work with stories. So what we want to do is we want to truly understand what is the story behind our system. So let's bring these events in order, and it should be readable from left to right. A business person should be able to read this from left to right and understand, okay, this is what our system does. And then we start adding screens. Screens are very important in event modeling, just to gather common understanding and everything. And then we define the APIs. You see it here using commands and read models. For each screen, we define, okay, what is the action that gets triggered if the user, for example, clicks on the select button? What is the effect of it? We store information in our system. How do we get the information out of the system? This is what the green sticky notes are for. So for example, we want to showcase a list, or we want to showcase the selected product. This is how you do it. A green sticky note is comparable, for example, to a SQL query. So you can really say that the orange sticky notes down here, you can think of them as a database. We store the events in our database, and the green sticky notes get the information out of our database to display them on the screen like a SQL query. What we then do is we define what we call swim lanes. This is just a grouping of events that allow us to understand which events belong together, which events form groups. That's very important. You can use this either to identify your aggregates in the system, if you know what an aggregate is. If not, absolutely not important. What you typically do it in the beginning is you identify what are the boundaries in our systems, what are the services, what are the teams that are involved, maybe, just to identify, okay, who is involved in this system. And the last thing, this is very important, we define policies. Policies in event modeling are always modeled as so-called given when thens. What is a given when then? We always say given we have a list of events. When I execute a certain action, then I want to showcase what is the new state of my system. That's the only thing that happens. So for example, if I select a product, if a product is selected, and if I want to upgrade this selected product, the information in my system is product upgraded. So I can showcase really how my system works. And I do this for each step in my system. Okay, enough of the theory. Let's get started. So what I want to show you is really how to work with event modeling in Miro. There are many, many tools that you can use to event model. You can use plain Miro. There are other tools, for example, on Auto, that is currently developed by Sam Hatoum, which is also a nice tool. I work most of my time directly in Miro. But if you ever work with Miro plain, you see that especially when the models get a little bit bigger, it stops to make fun. So what I did is I started building a tool all around event modeling in Miro, which also allows you to use code generation, to use AI and everything. But in the end, it's only a time saver. It allows you to work with your event models in Miro in a good way. So it stays fun. And what I want to show you is really how does this work in Miro? How do I work? And this is exactly what I do basically every single day. Okay, so what we do now is I need a scenario, something to model. And I intentionally did not prepare any scenario. What we will do is I will head over to ChatGPT. And I will ask ChatGPT for a simple scenario. Typically, I'm using the voice mode here, but I don't know why it doesn't work today. So I just write something. So, hey, ChatGPT, I want to model something. I'm in a live webinar showcasing event modeling. Give me a simple scenario, but do it as if a business person would talk to me in a kickoff meeting. Something like that. So ChatGPT will give me a simple scenario, and that's what I often do. So I talk to business people and I just ask them, okay, tell me, what is the system you want to build? What should it do? What I then do is I just copy this text here. I don't read it. I don't care. I hate reading these texts. What I do is I open the Miro tooling. You can install this for free. It's available on the marketplace. So if you go to the marketplace here in Miro, just search for event modeling. Sometimes I don't know why you need to click the second link here, and then you search here for event modeling. And then currently about 700 people are using this tooling. So this is what you just can install. It's freely available to use all the features. You need a license, but the basic modeling features are all freely available. So you can just use them. If you open it, you see it here on the left. That's the tooling. And what I do now is I take this text from ChatGPT and I ask it, hey, tooling, I want to use the AI integration. Can you just provide me a storyline from this text here? So the AI, it's open AI in the background currently, analyzes this text and tries to build a small timeline for me. And if you look, you see it already happened. So what we have here now is our first timeline. So I didn't read the text at all. So we have a client requested a consultation. So an assistant should schedule an appointment, a lawyer notified of appointment. So obviously we're talking something about lawyers. A consultation completed, the client signed the contract, case file was created, and an invoice was sent to the client. So this is what our system does. These are the important points here. And now what I would do is I would start discussing with the business people, okay, what needs to happen for this first event to get into our system? The client requested a consultation. How? How does a client request a consultation? And the business, someone from the business side could say, well, there is a web page for that. So we have a UI where the client can request this. Now what I do is I say, okay, great. Let's say we have this first action here. So there is a screen and there is an action, request client consultation. And the result of this action is the client has requested this consultation. Now I would talk to my business person, how does the screen look like? What is the information that gets captured on the screen? Here we have the screen prepared. That typically I work with two ways. Sometimes I work with the wireframe library in Miro. So the wireframe library is pretty decent to build simple screens. So you could say there is a text field here, something like that, and maybe there is a text area here, and maybe we have a button down here, something like that. That's all I do for the screens. That's enough. The only thing we want to do here is capture the information. Make everybody aware, what does the screen roughly look like? What are the elements? What information gets captured? It doesn't have to be beautiful and it doesn't have to be styled or something. Of course, you can use your pre-built screens by your UX department if you have one. But to get started, simple screens is more than enough. What I also often do is, there is a screen drawer integrated. So what you can do is just, this is something I very often do because it's so fast. I can just draw the screens here. Okay, that's my screen. We have a name field here. And we have a description text here for the consultation. And let's say I have a button down here. Send. Something like this. Beautiful.
Martin?
Yes.
Sorry, quick question.
Yeah.
We were wondering if you actually started the recording.
I did. It's not Miro. It's running in the background. It's already recording. Don't worry. I got you covered. All right. So this is a simple screen. It's really ugly, but this is intentional. So if you work with event modeling, drawing ugly screens will be one of your superpowers. It's very easy to lose yourself in drawing beautiful screens, and you will lose all the time in drawing screens, although it's absolutely not important. So a screen like that in the beginning is super fine. You don't need more than this. Okay, now I say export to screen, and the screen is here, and I can work with the screen. So let's do it like that. Oh, that's an ugly arrow. Oh my God. Why is this so ugly? Better. That's what you see here. And if you look at that, you see also what happens here. This arrow is red. Why is this arrow red? This tooling here, and this is one of the most important features in this tooling. Without that, I would lose so much time. This tooling validates at all times, do you make any wrong assumptions? This is the so-called information completeness check. It checks, is there enough information from the connected elements to fill this command here? So the blue sticky note here is the command we require. The AI assumed we require a client ID and we require a request method. I doubt that these are the real properties. We might need to adjust that, but it doesn't really matter. But currently our screen does not provide any information. So let's just say we have name and description here. I remove these attributes. I don't like them. Let's say we have name and description here. That's much better. Still, the UI does not provide any information. So what I can do now is I can just either add the attributes here, because what I typically do is I mark these fields here in the UI. So we have the name. Oh, no, it needs to be blue. Like that. The three elements in this UI that are currently relevant for this exact step in my system is the name, it's the description, and it's this button. When the user clicks on this button, these two informations get into the system. So what I do now is I define exactly these fields also on the screen. So I make sure that the system knows I know where this information is coming from. So adding the name here, adding the description here, and saving it. And you see then, as soon as I provide this information from the screen, so basically I tell the system, this screen provides the name and the description. Now the arrow turns black because now everything is great. The system knows all the information I need for my command here is provided by the screen. I don't need to do anything else. Same problem down here, of course. The connected event currently needs the client ID, currently needs the request method, doesn't match, so the arrow is also red. I do the same thing here. I clear everything and I just copy over the fields. Much faster. Now what I have here is, this is my first building block in the system. I have a UI, I have a command, which is basically my API. This could be a REST API. And I have my persistence down here. So this event tells me the information that gets persisted in the system is description and name. This doesn't mean that this is something like an event source systems. It can, but this could also just mean we are storing information in a relational database. So what we're doing with event modeling is we're modeling information flow. We are not modeling the implementation, we are modeling information flow. So the only thing you read here is there is a screen that provides name and description. There is an API that provides name and description. And in the end, we store name and description. That's our first slice. We call this a slice. A slice is basically the smallest building block you can have in a system. A slice can be implemented in isolation. We could implement this slice here and work with it. Now let's give the screen a name. The screen here is consultation. And let's make this whole thing a slice. What I need to do to make this a slice, I just select all the elements I want to be part of the slice. So typically for a slice like this is a state change slice. It's a screen, it's a command, and it's a one or several resulting events. I just select them and I make it like that. This makes it a slice here. So you can put anything into a slice, so that the tool does not care what you put into a slice. That's up to you. But typically, it's either a screen, a command, and an event, or it's an event and a read model, typically. But you see that in a second. Now, great. We already have our first slice defined. Now we can again talk to the business people. Are there any rules? What are the rules that I need to fulfill to get this consultation? So for example, we could say we cannot have the same consultation with the same name twice. This is a business rule we need to fulfill. And as latest when you give this slice to your development team, to your developers, they need to know these rules. These rules need to be crystal clear defined. And as I said, we use given when thens for this. So how could I describe this rule that I cannot have two consultations with the same name? We have the given when then editor. This is a scenario editor built into the tool. So what I can do is I can say given there is already a consultation in the system. When I try to request a second consultation, then I expect an error. Doesn't work. I can add a description here. Cannot add same consultation with the same name twice. Now I create this scenario here. Let's make the slice a little bit bigger. Like that. And now what I can do is I can add sample data. So it's really, really clear what this rule means. So for example, I can say, okay, if I have this event here, and the name of the client with the consultation is Martin, and I request the same consultation, the same person requests the consultation again, this doesn't work. It's an error. And this typically gets translated to a unit test or an integration test in your final implementation. This rule is crystal clear defined, and there is no variation. Every developer can read this and knows exactly, okay, I cannot request a consultation for this person twice. Of course, what you can do is you can model the good case for it. So for example, you can say, okay, but given nothing, when I request a consultation, then client requests a consultation. That's the easy case. If no consultation is there, I can just do it and it will work. And of course, here I can say, if I want, I can provide sample data. For example, name is Martin, and name down here is also Martin, which tells me if I request this consultation, I expect the same information to be stored in my database, to be stored in my event store, it doesn't matter. But we describe here, this is basically the good case. All right, that's our first slice. Now, typically, when you store information, you need a way to also retrieve this information. So for example, we could need a page where we want to display all these consultations. By the way, if you have questions, don't hesitate to ask. So you can ask questions at any point in time. Now, if I want to display these consultations here, what I would do is first, I would draw a simple screen. So what would this screen look like? So I can add a screen here. Okay, and we can say, okay, oh no, let's draw one that's faster. Something like this. And now let's add a consultation here from Martin. Something like that. And maybe we also add, let's add a button to delete one. Delete. Oh yeah, that's really ugly. So we can delete the we can delete the consultation. Something like that. And again, we put in a delete button here. Beautiful.
something? Maybe?
Yeah.
Can I have a question?
Yeah, of course.
Well, first question is, I've tried to build my own event source application. It was real fun, and it was simple task manager. And I was surprised by how big the event model actually is, because even though it's pretty simple thing to have a task manager and to update, delete, stuff like that, maybe track some hours spent on several categories and maybe tasks.
Yeah.
That was a lot of slices, many slices. And how do you help yourself to orient or get oriented in such a big event model? And how do you track changes? Because once I forgot to implement some parts that I've event modeled, and then you have to go through all the slices. So these two things, I'd like to know if you have some ideas how to do that.
Let me quickly show you. Maybe some people haven't seen a bigger event model. Let's quickly jump to the event model for the book, which is a realistic event model for a card system. Oh, what was that? So this is what an event model looks like. So you have these steps defined, and if I zoom out, you see there are quite a few things happening here. With the give and thens down here, this is what a typical event model looks like, and they can get really big. So they can get really, really big because these systems do a lot of things. So what I typically do is, what you don't have is you don't model everything in one model. You have several models. Don't do everything in one model. It's not that the whole system needs to be readable from left to right. That's not the point of event modeling. You can have many models. What you typically do is you structure models using chapters. What is a chapter? It's just this blue arrow here above the model, which allows you to structure the model. So for example, I have a chapter here which is called shopping, which is the shopping cart. But there is another chapter which could be, I think it's over here, which could be the back office, for example, which is a completely different model. You don't model everything into one thing, so you model it in different models. And this allows you to keep these models at a decent size. They still can be big, but they don't get overwhelmingly big. It's manageable. So just use multiple models, but stay on one board. Don't distribute them to different boards. This will make everything unreadable. You can do everything on one board, and you can have 50,000 elements on one board. So performance is typically not an issue. You can do a lot on one board. So it needs to happen quite a lot for me to split boards. At some point, you probably need to do this, but for most systems, one board is more than enough. Your second question, what was the second question?
Tracking the changes.
Oh,
because, when you change something in your model, and maybe you change a little thing here and a little change there, and maybe you add some tests like for given when thens and stuff like that, and then how do you track what's already being implemented or what you're currently working on? Stuff like that.
So what you do is, whenever you start working on a slice, let's do it step by step. Whenever you work on a slice, what I do is I put this slice into progress. So how do you do that? You just, why doesn't that work? So I'm going here, I select a slice, and I say this slice is now in progress. Assigned. Now what happens is this slice gets another border, so everybody knows this slice is in progress. And what I also do is I put a sticky note up here. Martin is working on this slice. So that's the first thing. So everybody knows, okay, Martin is working on this slice. I don't touch this. And if you're done with the slice, I say this is done. So you know exactly, all right, great. The slice is implemented, finished. How do you keep track of changes? That's a very good question, especially when you have bigger models. It first feels a little bit overwhelming, especially when you've been on vacation. Let's assume you've been 2 weeks on vacation, you come back and you have absolutely no idea what has changed here. So how do you keep track of the changes? First thing you can do is and this is really, I do when I come back to a model, you can use the Miro history. So go to board, go to history, and first it will tell you exactly what has changed on the board. That's one thing, but you also see the different versions. And you also can tell the board to highlight the changes since your last visit. So when you come back to a board and your team members have worked on the board, just highlight the last changes and you know exactly which slices have been changed since you last were on the board. That's really helpful. How do you keep track of the changes? The good thing is these slices tend to be extremely stable. When you implement a slice and this slice is done, typically these slices don't change. And I really treat changes to a slice like implementing a new slice. It's not that I'm adjusting these slices. A slice is really, changing a slice means to me it's really a new slice. I delete the old one, I just re-implement it from scratch because re-implementing is almost always faster than adjusting the existing slice. Especially in the back end. Front end, of course, I will not rewrite the whole front end most of the time, but sometimes this is also the case. Depends on how big the change is. But from a modeling perspective, I really treat these changes and slices as new slices. So what I typically do is I copy the existing slice like that. I copy the whole thing or make a screenshot of it. So I keep track of that. And then I start to adjust it. So I always know, okay, this slice is currently in progress by Martin, and these are the changes that he made. And then I can talk to my business person and say, okay, this is the change I made to this model. This is the slices. These were the slices that are affected. Should we get started with that or not? And if the business person says, oh no, that's too much work. I don't want to adjust 10 slices for this feature. It's too much. We can just go back to the earlier stages.
Nice. I mean, seeing like the diff, like the changes between the two mirrors, it's really lovely.
Yeah.
I still think that this is quite a challenging thing.
Yeah, of course. So it's not really challenging, but you need to get used to it. What is also possible, this Miro tooling provides the possibility to create a snapshot of your model. So you can create a snapshot of the model at some point in time. It's like a Git commit. And then you can take this snapshot and compare it to other snapshots. We can take a look at that later. And then you see exactly, okay, Christina took a snapshot on March 1st. What has changed since March 1st? And you see for all the elements, what has changed. These attributes have been added and stuff like that. This is also very, very useful to keep track of it.
Thank you.
Great. Other questions? All right. So what I want to do now is I want to add a read model here. So we have our simple screen, and now we know we need a list of consultations. Let's add a read model here, and let's say we call it consultations. And we can add a few fields here. What is the information we need? So we need a description, and what I typically do is I mark these fields also in the UI with green. So we need a description and we need the name here. And in the UI, obviously they are somehow put together. So let's add a description and the name here. And now I can say, okay, if I connect my event here, and if I connect the read model to the screen, everything is black. So this means I'm not missing any information. All the information is here. And the next thing I can do is I can make this also a slice. So let's move all the events here to the right. This is also something that this tooling helps you. It's navigating on this board and working with all these elements. It makes it very, very simple to work with these elements. So let's select this thing here. I want to make this a slice. And I want to make these slices equal height, equal width. And what you also can do is you can select all the elements in the slice. I select these elements and you can move this slice around. Now I have a second slice here. And I have two business capabilities of my system. One is I can get a new consultation into the system. And one is I describe exactly what needs to happen to display these consultations. And I can also provide test cases for my read model here. So I have the consultations read model. I can provide a given then for that. So a given then here is it's like a given when then, just without the when. So I say given client requested consultation, then I expect a read model to contain exactly, for example, the same information as from the event. So you can describe how certain events affect your read model. Later in the implementation, this could be, as I said, this could be a SQL script or something, but here we describe exactly how this should work, how this looks like. Sometimes you want to model an existing system. Not all systems that we develop are new systems. Sometimes you want to work with an existing systems. And what really, really helps here, especially for developers not yet used to work with these models, is to connect these events here to tables. You can add a table here. Let's do that. Because all developers are really, really familiar with tables. And as soon as they see these tables here, they start to understand what this actually means. Now, what can we do with this table? I connect this element here to this table, and we could say, that could be consultations. Is a decent table name in the system. There could be a consultations table, and I can just copy over the fields here, save them. And now what I can do is I can show them what this table will look like. So in this consultations table, it's like a relational table. We have a description column, we have a name column, and I can even provide examples here. So for example, I could say for the name, it's Martin. And for the email, or for the description, it's a sample description. And suddenly, by looking at this, they immediately understand, okay, this is the information that we store here. If we store this event, if the consultation gets into the system, what really happens under the hood is we have this table, and this table gets populated from this event, and this is the information that gets stored into this table. This is really, really helpful if you model an existing system, especially if it's not event sourced. Okay, great. Now we have two slices here. What you often want to do is you want to know a little bit more about the system, especially when you have these big systems. Sometimes you have questions about the system you want to answer. So what you can do is you can give this model here a name, especially when you have more than one model on the board. It makes so much sense to give this model a name. So for example, I could say this model here is my consultations model. Right? And you can add some information here, meta information you can use later in the code generation if you want to use the code generation. But we can say, why doesn't this work? Oh, it doesn't update. No. Now I can say these slices here belong to this one, belong to this context. Let's assign them. And now what I can do is, now I have my model, I have these slices assigned to the context, and since these slices are assigned to the context, I can build a tree structure here. So the tree structure here is your quick navigation in the model. If you have hundreds of slices, it's really hard to navigate. But what you can do here is you can quickly navigate, open these slices here, and you see all the elements in these slices and also get live validation. So what you see here, some of these elements are red. The tooling validates these elements in the background and tells you there is very likely that there is an error here. You missed something. Please have a look. So for example, if we look at the command here, we have the request client consultation command. We see the fields here, and the validation tells us you didn't define what is the ID attribute of this command. All the elements in the system typically have either a primary key or something that identifies this element. You did not define what is the ID attribute of this command. It could be an aggregate ID, it could be a stream ID, but something needs to identify this element. So for example, for the command, we could say there is the name, which could be unique, but the name is a very, very bad key. But we could say there is a consultation ID. Consultation ID could be a decent key, and we could say, well, let's make this a UUID. But if we store this is really bad. So having something like a consultation ID here confuses business people. They don't know what a consultation ID is, and it does not really add information. What you can do is you can just mark this consultation ID as a technical attribute. So this is an ID, this is a technical attribute, and if you store this, the attribute is simply not displayed. It's still there, everything is great, but it's not displayed. What happens here is, you see again the information completeness check, but since now the system knows, hey, there is this consultation ID, you did not define where this is coming from. Tell me. And what we can say is, for example, in case the client requests a new consultation, this thing simply gets generated. And then the validation is fine, because now we defined it doesn't have to come from the screen, it's generated here, all good, I know what I'm doing. All right. And of course, we want to copy it over. We also want to have it in the event. And now we have this information here. So if we now go back to our tree structure, hopefully, yeah, the command is now no longer marked red because we provided all the information. And I can say, for example, if I look for client, it shows me all the slices here which have the word client. So just there's a regular expression match. So you can quickly navigate between them, and then you can also say, okay, I want to select all the elements in this slice. Or I want to jump to the slice. Or I want to edit the slice. So you can very quickly navigate between these elements. And this is something that is really annoying if you work with plain Miro. Navigating in the model, finding certain elements is really, let's say, a pain in the ass if you don't work with tooling. And that was the initial reason why I started to build this tooling, because I was so annoyed by navigating these big models, because I always lost track. Okay, where is this element? What is this element connected to? It was really, really annoying. Okay, question?
One question.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm wondering, is there something like an inverse completeness check? Like now you added the ID to the command. As far as I see, it's not used anywhere.
Yeah.
Is that something that might be useful to check automatically as well? There's a payload in the command that is never used.
We could add a validation for sure. I'm not quite sure if that is really something I would validate. So sometimes you want to have this information stored in the event. Yeah, we could add this validation. Technically, it would be possible. Absolutely. Other questions? Oh, we only have 15 minutes left. My goodness. Time flies. So what I wanted to show you is also there's more here, especially analyzing an existing model. There's so much information in this model. What we can do is we can open the details view here. So for example, we see there's the data path. You can select any element here, and you can say, where is this information coming from? So for example, if you want to know, you have an element somewhere in your event model, and you want to know, hey, where is the name attribute coming from? You can just click here, and it will tell you, oh, it's coming from here. This is the screen. It's coming from here. And this works for the whole model. So if you open a bigger model, you can have many paths here, but you know exactly what is the origin of a certain attribute. Where is it coming from? Where does it come into the system? And these are questions you ask quite often, especially, for example, if you have to deal with something like GDPR. If someone asks you from where is this information coming from? In a traditional system, it's super hard to answer this question because it's scattered all over the place. If you have an event model here, this makes everybody very happy because you can show exactly where this information is coming from. You can also show this without the tooling, of course. The tooling just makes it a little bit easier and accessible. Also, what you can do here is there's the classic view. The classic view shows you for your tables in your model where the information is coming from and how certain attributes get populated. So for example, it could show you if there are several events that contribute to the name column here, you would see all the events here. So you would see the consultations table and you would see, hey, wow, 3 events are writing to the name column here. This is not good. There's a lot of coupling here, a lot of dependencies, which are most probably hidden. But if you open it like that here, if you model it, you see it. It's no longer hidden. It's very obvious and clear. And what you also can do is, if you have bigger streams, they typically work with aggregates. So let's define a swim lane here. Our events are typically in a swim lane. So you can simply add a swim lane like that. So now our event here is in a swim lane. And we have an aggregate defined. You don't have to define aggregates. Bastian knows this very well. There are event source systems without aggregates, but most of the time, if you work nowadays with event source systems, you still have some kind of aggregate that ensures consistency for one stream. But if you do this, if you define an aggregate, we can go back to the details tab, and now you have the aggregates view here, which tells you also for each aggregate defined in the system, what are the events that get created or that are connected to this aggregate. Which events does each aggregate take care of, which is also very, very helpful to have a quick overview most of the time. So what we have now is, we have two slices. We know how these slices work. We know how everything fits together. And we could now just simply go on. This is exactly how I work. I go through the system with the business experts slice by slice, not in the beginning on this detail level. Typically, we start high level by defining the elements without the attributes. The first thing we do is we try to define the flow for a certain chapter. So we would define a chapter here, and we would say, okay, what's the chapter for this model here? It's the consultations chapter. Let's name this consultations, and then we would try to define the flow exactly for this chapter. For this, we don't need any details. So we can define the story of the system, and then if we have the story defined and roughly everybody agrees on this story, then we go into the details and we model the system slice by slice. And as soon as we have a subchapter defined like this, so we can say, for example, the subchapter here could be new consultation. Here we create a new consultation, and the consultations chapter can be much bigger. As soon as one of these subchapters is fully specified, we can get into the implementation. We don't have to specify the whole system. We can start with the first few slices just to get something done. And this is really important. Don't model too long. Try to get something done. As soon as something is fully specified, you can get started, because a slice here is enough to get started. Everything you need to implement this is defined in this slice. Typically, you don't need more than this. All right. Wow, that was...
What is the difference between now your model that is consultations and then the chapter that is also consultations? The semantic difference?
That's only semantically, yeah. The consultations here is... You mean this one? Or do you mean the chapters up here?
Yeah, so they have the same name. So what is the difference between the chapter and the model?
They don't have to have the same name. So the model name here is only what you do here is you navigate on the board. So for example, you can say, here is the context here, and I want to go to this model here. This is it's just for navigation and for grouping on the board. This is semantically, this is what a business person would say when you talk about consultations. This is your model here. They don't have to be the same thing. It's not necessarily the same name.
Okay, thanks.
So we have about 10 minutes left. I wouldn't go into any more details. There is much more in the tooling that you can use. There is reporting you can use. So for example, looking at this, you can build statistics. You can get how many slices do we have and stuff like that. That's all very nice, but the most important features you have already seen. So let's take the last 8 minutes we have for questions you have, either for event modeling or for the tooling or whatever is interesting to you. Just speak out. Anything that interests you.
Hi, Mark.
Hi.
I actually wanted to know what's the mapping field.
Oh, yeah. Great. Yeah. Good question. So let's say, for example, we have in the read model, we rename the field description to Martin's description. Because for some reason we name it like that. Now what happens here is the arrow turns red because we have Martin's description here, but only a description in the source field. But what you can say to the tooling, or what you can tell the tooling, you can say, I know that the Martin's description can be mapped from description. It can be derived from that. And if you now save it, you will see the arrow turns black again, because now we defined where is this information coming from. This is what the mapping field is for.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Other questions?
Martin, I had a question regarding dynamic consistency boundaries. So how, maybe it's too complicated for this, maybe you can answer it in another context, but how would you model that? Because then you wouldn't need these aggregate swim lanes anymore, right? But where do I know from which events are relevant for a command? Is it then only the events that appear in a given then below in the scenario?
Most probably, I would model it exactly like I model it today, just without the aggregates. You would still have the swim lanes. I would just leave out the aggregates, most probably.
But where would I see which events are relevant for validating the command clearly? Because from now, I see that from the given then-dens, I guess.
Yeah. You only see it from the given then-dens. And most probably, this will also be the case later. So most probably, the given then-dens are the tool for that. But to be honest, I didn't really think about that yet. Bastian is also here. Sebastian, do you have an answer for that?
No, I was actually wondering the same, but I think usually there's mostly like two entities involved. And so if you would create swim lanes, maybe those events that affect two entities could kind of live in both, or you have like one combined swim lane or something like this. So
yeah.
But that's a good area for exploration, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm really lacking practical experience with DCB. So I never did a project using it until now. So I never have built a bigger model using it. But that will hopefully change very, very soon.
I have one more question.
Yeah.
When you are modeling, sometimes you have conditional flows.
Yeah.
For example, if we are giving option, either user is selecting a delivery option or a pickup option.
Yeah.
So how do you model that? Like it's a different model, or you put some conditional statement and then
No, typically if you have branches in the model, it's always a dedicated model. So I model these branches then as a dedicated model, and what I do is I link them from here. So for example, we could say if this often happens if you have more than one event resulting from a command, for example, and then you want to showcase, okay, in case of this event, client requesting consultation failed. Let's say this is an error event, for example. You want to show what happens in this case. And what I do then is I create a second model. Let's say consultation error case. And I link this event to this one here. So I know when I look at the event, okay, there is a flow here from this event. I can click on this link and I come to this model and I know exactly what happens here. This is how I do it.
So the common part basically remains at one place and you just link it and then define the rest of the flow there.
Exactly. What you always want to have is you want to have one consistent flow. There are no branches in event modeling by design. It's not possible. If you have branches in your model, you're doing it wrong. There is no branching in event modeling.